Fire!
Holy shit.
The golden age of piracy was a 10-year period of unabashed drinking, bootlegging, and murder that saw the creation of one of the largest black market economies in history. Firepower, intimidation, and a little bit of lunacy was their currency in life, and the Bahamas and Jamaica were their adopted homes. We set off for the Caribbean to get a taste of the pirate life that was far removed from the carefully manicured Hollywood depiction.
At their zenith, they brought three empires nearly to their knees and cut off commerce, and they had a very good time doing what they were doing.
One of the most notorious and violent was Charles Vane, who truly embodied the brutality of the times, dealing in death with a wide assortment of weaponry. We found a Florida-based weapons expert who knew the tools that Vane and his cohorts used to terrorize the seas.
I do believe that's a well-executed watermelon.
This is Michael O'Hara, an historical weapons expert with a specialty in pirate-era firearms.
This would be the deck-clearing device that would be the most popular. Charles Vane would love this thing.
Of all the pirates in the golden age of piracy, Charles Vane had to be the most violent and fearsome of the lot. He had no reservations about torturing people and using force even in situations where he didn't need to.
That type of weapon would be the perfect weapon for somebody as brutal as Charles Vane, because one shot from that could literally cut a man in half.
Just take him across?
Literally. Chest to pink mist.
This thing doesn't seem like it's fucking around. So how does something like this work? This is with the flintlock. Can you take me through it?
Sure. First we would withdraw a cartridge, and this is the bullet that would go with it.
So what's in this bullet?
That's 100% lead.
Just 100% lead, okay.
This is a very unpleasant thing to hit someone with.
Just turns into kind of like a big blob of metal coming into you?
Basically a big pancake of lead.
Just drop it down?
Just drop it down. And you would take the cartridge paper and ram it down on top of the bullet. Just slide it down the barrel and follow with the ramrod.
Right.
It prevents the bullet from migrating down the barrel as you're carrying it, because you'll create an airspace here, and that could cause a barrel failure.
And what happens when a barrel failure occurs?
Well, you have bits of barrel everywhere, and
Oh, so it's not like it doesn't go off, it explodes.
it explodes. And that's a bad thing. Now you have a loaded firearm.
Is there any trick to aiming? Holy shit. I missed. Apparently there are some perils to shooting these things. First time shooting, not so successful. So how often does that happen to people?
Not terribly often. I need another bandage. The one is not going to be enough here.
In all honesty, I thought that a little flintlock pistol would have the kick of a toy gun. Instead, it ripped my finger open. And it made sense that a little blood is all in a day's work for a pirate. Just like the Caribbean pirate stomping ground, Florida is hot, humid, and generally unsettling. The guns that these pirates used were big, loud, powerful, and dangerous to wield. Also, they weren't really that accurate. So you had to be really good or really close to your target, all right, to cause some damage. Although these weapons were difficult and often dangerous to use, in a seasoned pair of violent hands, a pirate could kill with ease.
Good. There we go.
Foolproof.
We didn't have to use the last ditch method to put the bayonet if you missed that one.
Right. With a basic understanding in pirate weaponry, I was beginning to get the dangers of life and crime on the open sea.
One of the reasons that these pirates became as powerful as they did is that they had a secure base to operate from.
New Providence, Bahamas is where Charles Vane called home, now commonly known as Nassau, and was one of the earliest outposts of British privateers. They were often former naval crew turned crooks, trained in weapons and war, and after being decommissioned, they became some of the first pirates of the Americas.
Bahama Islands colony had been sacked and destroyed by the French and Spanish multiple times, and the pirates set up shop before the empire did. In other words, it was a failed state, and the pirates moved in first. So it was an ideal spot, which allowed them to grow incredibly strong.
Nowadays, the Bahamas are home to a bunch of fancy resorts. But just like the pirates before them, many native Bahamians still make their livelihoods off of the sea. We headed out to the west side of the island to see exactly where Vane battled the elements and raked the seas for riches. We brought along Captain Mike Daniel, the underwater explorer and pirate expert who discovered the famous sunken pirate ship Queen Anne's Revenge, and a guy who has spent years searching the waters around Nassau Harbor.
What about these waters made it so ideal for piracy?
The beauty of Nassau is that it's got a front door and a back door. The front door is deep water and the back door is shallower. So the Royal Navy or anyone trying to catch them would usually be in bigger ships. They couldn't get into these shallow waters.
Some of the most famous shipwrecks and savage battles happened in the waters in and around Nassau Harbor. Thanks to its long barrier island and network of unmarked reefs and sandbars, it was the perfect hiding place for Charles Vane, and an ideal location from which to launch one of his trademark ruthless assaults on the nearby shipping lanes. The type of attacks that made him the de facto ruler of the island in 1718.
How did the pirates know where to find their prey? Where would you find a merchant vessel? Sailing vessels were compelled to follow the prevailing winds from place to place. The various islands on the outside of the Caribbean, there were key passages. These were all choke points where the commerce of nations was compelled to go and the pirates could lie in wait in ambush.
And what were some of the tactics that were used around here for navigating and taking other ships?
If you were trying to catch a big ship, then it would take, a large sloop, of course, with some cannons on board to get up alongside and fire on them and then intimidate them into conceding.
Not only were the pirates at risk of losing their lives through everyday violence, the sea itself harbored an even more horrifying and gruesome death.
The waters were infested with all kinds of dangerous creatures like sharks, and there were certainly much larger numbers of them then than there are now.
You can see you can see the bottom down here, right?
Yep. Oh, this is all the. This is where
shark. I don't feel good about that at all. I see at least 4 right there. Right, who's going first?
You're going first, man. Gotta test the waters.
Awesome. This is stupid.
Just sit back and relax.
Yeah, feeling super relaxed.
In 1715, the Spanish treasure fleet, a total of 8 ships, sank along the treasure coast. The pirates, they had a team of people on board that could swim and could dive. So divers went down in 50 feet of water and recovered all of those cannons, as well as probably 80% of the treasure that had been on board.
A lot of times, the lowest ranking crew members were sent down to dive for treasure, and we were getting a good sense as to why. It was 40 feet of water with a full tank of air, and 3 chainmailed bodyguards around me, and I was still completely freaked out.
You didn't have flippers, you didn't have a mask, you had some form, hopefully something you could see through. You go down, you stick your hand in a hole and a morio grabs you, or a barracuda or a shark.
One can only imagine how a half-drunk pirate in a makeshift air bubble must have felt blindly groping around the sea floor.
There's a lot of sharks knocking right into you. I mean, there's just sharks everywhere. I couldn't imagine doing that without all this. Whew.
If you're signing up for a merry life and a short one, you're assuming that if you go into piracy, the chance that your life is going to be cut short by storm, naval action, or the hangman's noose is pretty high. And so when they were going off in piracy, in a sense, they were already accepting death, laughing in death's face. We're going to go break all the rules anyway, and we're not afraid. You're basically saying, we don't fear death because we're already allied with death and have made peace with it.
It was becoming clear that what many now consider a paradise was anything but for those who lived under the thumb of Charles Vane and the pirates. But even with the unseen dangers and violence lurking at every turn in the Bahamas, it was decidedly worse 300 miles to the south in the black market hub of Port Royal, Jamaica. where Charles Vane eventually met his death. Life there centered around pillage, plunder, and a shitload of rum, as well as an acceptance of the fact that you're most likely going to die very soon.